Welcome to Immaterial World,
a dedicated and transparent space to recenter how we explore glamour, magic, culture, and everything else we love together.
Immaterial world, come meet me in the immaterial world. As far as the galaxy goes, we're flying in the immaterial world. Immaterial world, come meet me in the immaterial world. With mind and body and soul, we're flying in the immaterial world. The immaterial world.
Avery Trufelman is the host and producer of the podcast Articles of Interest, named one of the best podcasts of the year by The New Yorker, The New York Times, The Atlantic, and many others. She was named one of the 500 most important people by the trade journal Business of Fashion.
When I talk about my work in trend forecasting, I'm never just going to say it's all about this color or it's all about this detail. You know, wear red, wear bows, buy this. I think that it's important to empower people with understanding the why of trend, how things have unfolded and come to be, and why they might be invited to participate in a certain trend at any given time, often to the chagrin of my clients too, I will say. They like to push products, and I like to empower them a little bit more about the why. So I'm thrilled to chat with our guest today, who, like me, has got to know the why and gets to the historical origins of the mundane in fashion. Hello, Avery Trufelman. We are so excited to welcome you to the immaterial world.
Thank you so much. This is so fun.
We are delighted.
So excited to have you here. Do you want to tell us a little bit about your professional journey, your personal journey, and how we got here today?
Yeah, sure. So I always like to start by being very transparent that I am a Nepo baby, even though it means something very different when you like work in radio. It's not as glamorous, but I kind of always wanted to work in radio because my parents met working in radio. They met working at WNYC, and I grew up, like the radio was always on when I was growing up. They'd always tell stories and show pictures about like working at the station after midnight, smoking cigarettes, cutting tape with a knife. And Allen Ginsberg would wander in, just, you know, antics at the radio station. And I think for lack of other idea, like I really just did not know what I wanted to do with my life. And I think I heard other kids be like, I want to be an astronaut. And I was like, oh, I want to be a radio producer. Like, that seems fun. And so my whole life, I was like, I'll just be a radio producer like my parents. Like, that just seems like a fun job. You like read books and you go to concerts and you record people talking, and that sounds great. And then I chose where I went to school based on wanting to work in radio. And I took all my classes pass fail and spent all my time at the radio station. And then when I graduated, I like could not get a job in radio because there are only so many stations on the dial and so many people at each station. And I think my parents were the only two people in the history of WNYC who actually left their job. Like, everybody stays in radio for as long as they possibly can. And then thankfully, when I entered it, like podcasting was becoming a thing, but it was so rinky dink. It was so small beans when I started. I graduated college in 2013. And so it was like this new little thing. And so I worked for this podcast that was really small called 99% Invisible. And then while I was working at it, podcasting blew up and the timing was incredible. Like, Serial came out while I was working at this podcast. And I remember I was in a bathhouse in San Francisco, and this like big Russian guy sat down next to me and he was like, so you listen to the latest Serial? And I was like, oh my God, podcasting has like made it. Like, you know, it used to be like
that was the sign.
Oh, 100%. Because, you know, it used to be like, do you know what a podcast is?
Yeah.
Like, no. Yeah. And then as soon as I was in a spa with this guy, like talking about Serial, I was like, oh, like, this is really different. Like, this is like, stuff is like, it's really going to change. And then I've just been, and it's really funny. I go to podcasting like meetups and conferences. I was at South by Southwest last year, and everyone was like, "How long have you been working in podcasting?" I'm like, my whole life, like since I was 22. I've never done anything else. I'm like a dinosaur. It's a very young industry, but I'm like a dinosaur in this young industry. So I've never done anything else.
I mean, it's also crazy too because I'm sure you get this a lot, but like the voice for radio that you
Oh,
have too.
thank you.
It's like, it's like two parents coming from radio and like you were born to do this. I could listen to
Well,
you talk about anything,
oh,
but
thank you. Well, they weren't announcers, They like worked in behind the scenes. They were like producers. But I will say, I always love listening to like the first episodes of shows and later episodes because you can really hear as people get more comfortable on the microphone, their voice like drops. Then they start out like really high and squeaky. And I think I've just been doing this for so long that I got more comfortable.
it's
Like I just think
comfortable,
like the radio
yeah.
voice is a comfort thing. So it's funny. I think there is this element of predestination or something where people are like, "Oh, your voice," but I think like these things are interwoven. I think I also sort of chose my voice by just being on mic for so long, which
Yeah,
is kind of funny. I just listen to my
it's
own voice all the time.
it's like, when you're speaking in that super high voice, it's like, is this okay? And then you're like,
Exactly,
well,
exactly.
I'm really relaxed.
I'm
Let me
really
tell you about
relaxed.
this.
Yeah, exactly. You're like, whatever, it's no big deal. And I listen back to my old squeaky radio stories. And it's not like I've ever had like a particularly squeaky voice, but you can tell I'm just like, I'm like breathing through I'm just like, I'm so nervous. I'm so nervous I'm going to make a mistake. And yeah, he was like, and I'm sure you've felt it like with every recording you do. You're like, okay, whatever.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Yeah. When I met you back in, gosh, was it like 2021 or 2022?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Paulina and I had just started Romanistan podcast because she was just featured on the LA Times podcast Foretold. And so, yeah, my voice has been dropping for a few years. With
Yes.
yours. But yeah, Paulina and I were obsessed with you immediately just because you speak so interestingly about the work you do. Your podcast, Articles of Interest, treats clothing as a cultural text, which, Paulina and I were like, let's talk about patterns with you forever and
Oh
why
my
they're so important.
God.
And so we both nerded out so hard with you, and we're so excited that we could talk to someone who understands the cultural text of clothing and how cultural can transcend ethnicity. There's so many different subsets of culture. So, what inspires you to explore fashion in this multifaceted narrative way?
Well, first of all, thank you so much. That's like so kind of you to say. And, the feeling of obsession is totally mutual, especially with Paulina. Hope she's doing well.
She is.
But,
We're working on our second book now. And a tarot
congratulations.
deck.
Dude,
Yeah,
that's
we're busy.
amazing. That's incredible. I know. As soon as you said that, I'm like, you should make an episode of Articles of Interest with all of your spare time that you have. I'm sure you don't, but that would be really
Oh,
fun.
we would do it in a heartbeat. We would.
Oh, really?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because sorry, maybe this will all be covered in the episode, but after we had that dinner and like, you guys gave me all these brands to look into. And I was like, these are amazing. I was like, what? Like, there must be a story in here somewhere. So,
Oh yeah, there is. Let's talk.
okay, we'll talk later. We'll talk later. Sorry, what was your question?
Yeah, what inspired you to start Articles of Interest? Why do you like to explore fashion in this multifaceted narrative way?
Well, I'm genuinely confused by it. That's something that I think it all really comes from a genuine place of confusion. Like I only set out to ask real questions that I genuinely have. Like how do I put this? Sometimes people ask me like, why are you so obsessed with fashion? I'm like, I'm not really obsessed. I mean, I love clothing. I think clothing is amazing. I just have a lot of questions about it. Like a perfect example that I love to give is an early episode I did was about perfume because I like didn't get it. I didn't understand why it was so expensive. I didn't understand why it was in all the duty free shops. I was like, clearly this is a hustle. It's just a way for brands to extend their reach, It's basically flavored water. It's all about the packaging. I wanted to be like, wake up, sheeple. It's not real. It's all chemicals. And I was like, I'm going to blow the lid off this thing. And then, of course, I dipped a toe in and was like, this is amazing. This is an art form. I'm obsessed with this. And now I'm like, I've become that thing that I once ridiculed. I like have a million bottles of perfume and I'm obsessed with perfume now. But I didn't know that until I talked to the actual artists and engineers and scientists who make this stuff. So that's the thing. Each episode comes from a place of like real, genuine confusion. And I think I really wanted to make a show for people who are really genuinely curious about what we wore, not necessarily in looking at like runway or looking at magazines, and not even necessarily in shopping. Like I don't think looking at clothing is the same as buying clothing. I think you can enjoy clothing in the same way some people enjoy bird watching. It's just like human plumage. Like you can just be out on the street. There's so much of it everywhere. There's so much to read and to enjoy. But looking at it as you said, is like a rich text. And as soon as you start noticing it, you start asking, like, why do people do that? Why do people do that? Why do people do that? And I was like, I guess I'll just make a show about that.
I love this. And, it's funny that you are calling out the episode with perfume. We did have Arabelle Sicardi on our show, and we really talked about perfume.
Oh my God, I love her.
Yeah. And it's so funny because when you say perfume, the thing that I think about is Dana Thomas, who you've interviewed on your show. And, Deluxe, How Luxury Lost Its Luster. I talked about that in the Arabelle Sicardi episode. And that book came out in 2008. And I remember that because it was like a pivotal point in my career when I understood from that book how mass production was going to change everything. Like that I was sort of being brought into, and like it was like, actually it's not even going to stay like this. Like we're going to move into something like super large scale, very much like the high street fashion kind of model of Europe. And it's exactly what happened. But I did want to just call out a couple of my favorite episodes. The Clueless Closet episode is one of my favorites because it is the eternal question, right? Like, I think so many people have wondered, why don't we have that yet? And you really get into that. I wanted to just call out a few of my favorite episodes. The Clueless Closet episode, something that we've all thought about. Why doesn't that exist? And you really break it down and get into that in a way that makes so much sense. Talking about styling, that's something that I do more on the commercial side. You get into it more of how it came to be in the celebrity world in Hollywood. Again, Dana Thomas. And then also, of course, like this episode that you've run a couple of times with updates, but the mannequins from the theater of the mode and how that came to be. What is the favorite story that you've uncovered or that you've researched?
Oh, well, thank you. Those are some of my favorites too. I don't know, like they're all my children. They all take so long to do. Like they all take so long to make. I don't know. There are like certain experiments that I've done with multi-part storytelling. Like I did one big series about where do preppy clothes come from, and I just did one recently about the intersection of the outdoor industry and the American military, which was like totally mind-blowing for me. Like I'd never really interacted with the military before doing this. Like those in-depth explorations I learned so much from. So I think those are really, really dear to me. And I also really struggle to put together like a more complicated story over many, many parts that extend over time. So those ones are always like extra precious, but I don't know. I love them all. I mean, they each take like a year to make. They take so long to make. So
Oh my God, that is it's so fascinating. And, just like with anything, you have to pick your battles, right? Like, what are the things that you really want to get into? And one of the reasons why I love the Clueless Closet episode, first of all, you talk about so many things that I love. You talk about the wardrobe stylist versus the set stylist or the prop stylist. And I always say like the prop stylist and the people that are setting this, doing the sets, they're the real heroes. Like people don't realize that is a really, really hard job. That is so different than the wardrobe stylist. And then you get into the reason why it doesn't exist basically is because of the mass that you would have to accumulate for that to really be a real working model. But there's something that you very gently say that I don't so gently say in my work, which is, this is coming from a human perspective, that taste is really coming from a curation from somebody that knows what the hell they're talking about versus an AI that you want to just spit at you and tell you what to do because you sort of like want to sign over your own human intention.
Right.
Right. So I'm always in this place of how do we get people to understand the importance of human artistry and human touch in style and how that is sort of at odds with this idea of AI or the computerization of things. What do you think about this? And I think that you sort of gently navigate this in that conversation so well. I've listened to this episode a few times because sometimes this comes up for me in my work. So I'm curious your take because you're also sort of navigating in that world in such an interesting way.
You mean the people who are like, why bother? Like, why should I make?
Yeah, like I would rather that a computer just tell me what outfit
Yeah.
to put together. Like I even found it funny when you were talking to the people that had done the app and they were like, I would have never thought to put this together. And it sounded to me as though they just sort of rolled in a pile of clothes and they were like, oh, the computer said to do this, so it works for me.
I mean, yeah, the thing about fashion that I think about all the time, the thing about clothing is that it's like really resisted the material age or the age of automation in so many ways, even though of course it was the start of the age of automation. I mean, that's what the Luddites were resisting. That's why they were you know, bashing looms is because they were scared of automation. Like this is where the term comes from. And it is wild that, yes, although looms were able to be automated eventually, I feel like the vast majority of people, like I was having this conversation with my father, of all people. He was like, Avery, why does a shirt still need to cost $700? I was like, it really depends on the shirt, Dad. Sometimes it's.
Just patch me in for that conversation.
Exactly.
I can get into that part.
Exactly. I was like, okay, there are a lot of elements to consider here. And he was like, it's brand markup, isn't it? I was like, sometimes, yeah, but sometimes not. Like, where's the cotton from? Like, who made it? You know, like, look at the seams. How are they finished? All these different things. And he was like, but doesn't a machine just spit that out? And I wanted to be like, Father, no, 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 no. Like, people don't know. People don't know that every single garment we wear is still made by a human. And I feel like, especially in this day and age where like your music collection is no longer physical, your like movie collection is no, like who even has a movie collection anymore? Like people don't own physical collections of things. It's all just sort of in the cloud and it's like changing and shifting all the time. But the stuff that's in your closet is still like physical and yours, and you touch it and you've collected it, and you're not going to be able, and you still like have a physical body. You're not going to be able to outsource that. It's a physical collection that you have to have, and like it or not, it does say something about you. So it's like so resolutely human that you might as well lean into. Like it was made with human hands for your human body, and it contains every single thing contains such a rich history. Something as simple, which is why I really like doing this series about like where preppy clothes come from and where military clothes come from, because these are garments that people think are like basics or simple. They're like, oh, this isn't saying anything, but everything says something. You know, there are all these really rich texts that whether or not you dress for other people are reading, but really like it should make you happy. Like it should tell an interesting story to you. It'd be like having a machine tell you what to eat for dinner every night. You'd feel gross after a while.
Yeah, I have to say this, that one of my dreams was to have a television show like Chef's Table about the fashion industry, because people don't realize that humans make your clothes. It is something, it's so interesting that you said your dad, I think that people believe that robots make their clothes and that there's so many things, but you don't know how many human hands have touched different parts of the processes and, how samples come to be created and like where patterns come from. And it's so fascinating. And I think that the work that you do is a bridge to the unseen worlds that people don't really comprehend when it comes to fashion. So I find this so fascinating to talk about because you're really in the weeds with this in a different way.
Thank you. Well, I mean, I think a helpful thing for me is that, I'm not an insider. And I'm still perpetually like perplexed by all the levels of depth that our clothes go through. Like I'm working on a story right now about fit models and talking with lots of different fit models and just like,
Yeah.
oh my God, that's
It's
a whole
cool,
other.
right?
It's cool, but
Yeah.
it's like the amount of work and arguably love and care, right? Like you could interpret it as love and care. Like the amount of times a garment has to get fitted over and over again to like make sure you can move in it, make sure it's comfortable. And these like amazing people, they're like athletes, you know? They're just perfectly proportional athletes. They just stand all day long. They're
Yeah.
incredible. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm the first 15 years of my career were in design and product development, and there's so many nuances like that I don't think people know.
Yes.
And those people are like the muse of the brand, right? Like they're the body of that brand. It's, oh my God, I can't wait to listen to that one.
Oh, thanks. Thanks. It's very interesting talking to them. And they're like so hard to reach because they never check their email. You know, they're just like out on their feet all day long. It's super interesting.
Wow, that is fascinating. Jess, I still think you should do that TV show, by the way. But
Yeah.
Putting it in the universe, putting it in the universe.
you would be great for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, how has all of this affected the way that you dress and style yourself, Avery? Like, there you think so deeply about this. How does it come into your personal life?
That's such a good question. I mean, I just end up falling in love with anything I do a story about. Even stuff that I thought I would never ever like, especially like the military clothes. I was like, ugh, never, like I could never, I won't. And now I'm like, oh, this stuff is really great. Like it has such an interesting backstory and I feel really aligned with it. Like once you know a little bit more about anything, I don't know. I think I used to be very judgmental of clothes and be like, oh, that's what they wear. I wear this, they wear that. And then once I learned, this is why I really like doing a podcast about clothes because it's non-visual, right? Like you could look at the clothes and be like, that's not me. But once you hear the story behind it, I don't know. I just kind of like the preppy clothes too. I just hated. And then I fell in love with them afterwards. I'm trying to think of a good example. Like here, okay, this is a shirt that I got, or this vest that I'm wearing currently. I got it recently on a trip to China, and while I was there, I was doing a story about, well, I don't know how to quite describe what it's about, but it started the way all stories do with a genuine question. When I saw women walking around dressed in 14th century costume, like they looked like Queen Amidala. I was like, what is going on? And at first, you know, like with these amazing imperial hairdos with lots of like jewels in their hair and these fans, and they would go to the imperial palace or these tourist attractions and they would take pictures of themselves. And so I was like, oh, it's an Instagram thing. It's just like an Instagram thing. But then they were everywhere and they're walking around on the street. And I slowly realized that this is starting to inform designers. Like I was looking at the Adidas China collection. I was like, I see these elements of like 14th century. Like, why is everyone reverting to the 14th century here in China? And these like elements of ancient Chinese clothing that are coming back. And so this is a vest that I got at Uniqlo China. And I don't know if you can see it. It has like these Chinese buttons, these like very like tang jacket Chinese buttons. And I think I just wouldn't have thought anything of it before, but I was doing research about why these buttons came to be. And it's because in Chinese sewing, as opposed to like Western sewing, there's much more of a culture of tearing clothes apart and remaking things out of them. Clothes are not so tightly fitted and they are much more easily like messed with and repaired, which is why you have this style of button. Yeah, it's the proper thing. People might call it a Mandarin jacket, but it's called a tang jacket, and it's like this little. I don't know how to describe the style of button. I'm certainly going to have to figure this out if I'm going to talk about it on a podcast. But basically, like it's external. You don't need to put a hole. You don't need a buttonhole. Like it's all external. It's really easy to like take off and put back on. I was like, oh, that's so brilliant. That's why the Chinese buttons are that way. And with the Western buttons, you basically have to like, you've made this beautiful garment and then you have to risk totally messing it up by poking a hole in it, by like poking a series of holes in it. And so it's this like reclamation of this alternative way of making garments that they had been doing in the 14th century that they then ditched because of Western imperialism, and now is like back at Uniqlo. And I was like, I have to buy these. I was like, I have to buy this jacket. Even though I don't think I would have called it like my style, especially if I had seen it in New York. I definitely would not have been drawn to it. So I just find myself, I mostly dress for the story. Like everything I wear, I kind of wear for the story. If you ask me what I'm wearing, I can tell you like everything has a little story behind it.
Oh, I love this. And I also feel like when you're in this industry or in whatever way, your travels or, the production
Yes.
runs that you're seeing, anything that you're exposed to, definitely like you start dressing for the plot for sure. Like
Yes.
it
Yes.
becomes like
Yes.
a souvenir in its way of that time and it like represents a moment for sure.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it makes it so hard to part with anything. You're like, they all mean something. When people talk to me about like, where do I find a plain shirt? Like, what? Why would you want why do you want a plain shirt? I don't get it.
That's so funny. I love that you're talking about the button too, because you really do talk so much on the show about sort of not to me, but I would say to the general public, the more overlooked or invisible aspects of fashion, like care labels and zippers and uniforms and technical garments. How do you get into the weeds with these things and why are they so interesting to you? I mean, that's a great anecdote, right? Like to wonder why this kind of button. And for me, I think about the story that you're just telling, and I always think like in Eastern fashion, you have like more free sizes where things are just sort of made in one size. And in the
Right.
Western fashion, it's like, size runs and things are a little bit more particular. But how, like, when you start investigating, what about these details is making the difference for you?
Well, I always work on a lot of stories all at once, and I just have like a big document of everything that I'm thinking about. And I'm usually just kind of slowly collecting stuff. And I have to tell you, I would say 70% of the time, I feel like I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm just calling people up and I'm like, I don't know if this will turn into an episode. Like, I don't know what's here. Or someone offers me whatever. Like, I did a story on zippers, and that began because the YKK zipper factory reached out to me and they were like, do you want to come see our factory? I was like, yeah, yeah, totally. And I hopped on a train. I was like, it'll be really fun to take the train. I took a train down to Macon, Georgia, and was a little like, what am I doing here? What am I going to do with this story? How am I going to turn this into a story? It's just kind of like slowly amassing these things. But like, for example, with that China story, the story that I did in Beijing and Shanghai, I first like saw those girls dressed up and was like, is this a story? And I just went up and started talking to them, looking like an idiot because I don't speak Chinese. Like, sorry, sorry. And then I had to like tap a friend who speaks Chinese and be like, will you come speak to me and like help me ask these amazingly dressed women about their clothes. So like collected some tape and was like, I don't even know what I'm going to do with this. I don't even know if this is a story, just like started doing it. And I saw a store that like rented out those costumes and I ran into that store and was like, what's up with, just like slowly piecing together these things. But I was like, I don't know if this will become anything. So they sort of organically happen. But that's why they take so long is because they like roll out. I'm just working on maybe 12 at a time. And I'm just thinking about all of them and gathering information and talking to people. And then the story truly tends to emerge organically. And I think why I focus on these small things like zippers and sizes and buttons and care tags is that they're the most easy to relate to. Like you don't have to describe them that much. Everyone knows what they are. Um, I think it's way harder to describe something that's like new or novel or something that someone has to truly imagine anew. That's why I don't really talk about, couture or what the latest design is, because that's really hard to just conjure up in your own mind. It's nice to stick to what's known. That's why this tends to be more of a history show. Even though one day I'd like to talk about what's new and cutting edge. That's just harder on the radio.
That makes a lot of sense too, because I think that you bring attention to things that either people aren't thinking about, and are fascinating, or people really should be thinking about. And something else I really enjoy about your show is how you highlight labor and production. And what do you wish that people understood about the human stories behind their clothes? We touched on it earlier, but there's so much to say.
Oh my God, it's such a good question. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing with clothing, right? Is it's such an amazing source of human connection and it's such an amazing source of human exploitation. And this is why clothing has been so pivotal in global history, is that it's such an easy industry that like all you need is a sewing machine. You don't need a big factory. Anyone can just enter this business in their homes, and they still do in every single country all over the world. This is how like lots of mothers and like families, I mean, this is how America got its start as a manufacturing capital. This is like the seat of so many nations. It's the seat of so many families, is sewing and the sewing machine. Which is really interesting because we don't really think of like the home as a source of industrial labor, but it really is. Like this is sewing's legacy. And because it's so quote unquote easy to do. I don't think sewing is easy to do, but it involves relatively less training. It involves relatively less equipment than, say, whatever, welding or any other trade. It's looser and it is harder to regulate. And that has always been the case. And it always has been rife for abuse from its very origins. Like you go to any clothing story far back enough and then you're talking about slavery just instantly. Like in any country, especially this country, but most countries, you're talking about slavery, you're talking about exploitations and trade. It just thrives because it's always been about trade. It's always been about getting the best deal. And it's always been about using labor, whether that's like farm labor to get cheap cotton or sew stitch labor. And so that's the thing. It's this industry that we all need and we all love and we all adore, but it's just like baked into it is this cruelty. And nowadays we are so invested in like, how can I find ethical clothes? How can I find ethical clothes? And of course you can't, you can't unless someone really just made it for you out of love with cotton they grew. It's just like there it's embedded in the way that clothing is made and grown. But I don't know. That's the thing. I wish there was some easy line to be like, buy American or buy organic or there are all these different things. There are all these different or don't buy, buy secondhand. There are all these different practices that people can lean on or turn to. And I don't think any one is a silver bullet. I mean, the most important thing is to just stay like hyper aware, as I think you both are, of course, and to like know that this thing that we love and we need has a lot of pain in it too. And they can't really be separated. But it's something I reckon with. I like am always wrestling with. And it's not just fast fashion. Like I think about the people, the burnout that's involved in high fashion and like the runway models who are getting paid nothing. It's like at every step of it, it's like this weirdly cruel world. So that's why I also think it's fun to take a step back. And that's why I also like that this is a fashion show that's not about shopping. But I feel like there aren't enough options to just be like, I like clothes without thinking about what it means as a consumer. Because that's also an option people don't talk about. You can just enjoy it. You can like looking at it. You can like touching it. I mean, sure, you have to wear it, but it's okay to just talk about it and think about it without buying it.
I really love that too. What you were saying about slavery is so powerful. I was just reading this book that came out in 2025, The Permanence of Anti-Romani Racism, Unuttered Sentences by Dr. Margareta Matake. And all my life, it's so good.
I'm going to ask you for that.
I will send it to you.
Thank you.
Yeah, all my life I thought that sewing was a Romani survival trade in one way, but it turns out that sewing became a Romani survival trade in such a popular way because of slavery. And the 500 years that Roma were enslaved in present day Romania, a lot of our trades that were popular before that period, in the late 1300s when it began, were replaced by domestic staff work. And so there are a lot of lost trades, and then these are replaced through, I guess, what was demanded of the enslaved Roma. And then even after the emancipation, which, just like in the US, wasn't an emancipation, they were still expected to perform these jobs as like the only jobs that were okay for them to work. And I had no idea how much it changed the landscape of our survival trades. And it was just mind blowing. And the book wasn't just about that, but I was, I was so moved where I was like, how did I not know this? And people are writing more about these things every day, which I'm happy we're learning these stories.
That's so interesting. May I ask, was it also like legally mandated that Roma could only do certain professions?
Um, Good question. There was a lot of legal mandates around what Roma can't do.
Sure.
So it left a lot of like, you can do this or that.
Right,
And
right.
it's interesting because fortune telling is one of those weird ones where it's been our survival trade for so long. And then we can trace how it has impacted culture by all of the legal mandates trying to control fortune telling because it was too much our own personal power and insight. But
Yeah.
yeah, and so I'm not sure about that one in particular, but I also haven't finished the chapter.
No, that's so interesting. Well, it's just like history's repeating, it's over and over again. And you saw this with the Chinese Exclusion Act, right? It's like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
you can do laundries and you can open restaurants, you can do this feminized labor. We can't have you stealing manly jobs.
Yeah.
Over and over again. There's this sort of interesting idea that sewing is somehow female, this industrial work is somehow female. And because of that, it's somehow okay. And also because of that, the factories don't have to be legitimate and it leads to like the triangle shirtwaist fire. Like it just has all these ramifications. The way that we have seen sewing culturally, and I say we, like it's like a global we. It's so interesting. Although I'm sure there's a culture out there that's like has a manly culture of sewing, which would be very interesting to find. But by and large, so many cultures like just see it as this feminized source of labor, therefore irrelevant. And like this is the source of all the cruelty. It's so nutty. I mean, that makes so much sense.
Yeah. Actually, coincidentally, there's another Romani academic who writes a lot about feminized labor, especially in the fashion industry, Ethel Brooks. And there's a lot of overlap with how she sees fortune telling as well as feminized labor that has been, condemned or brushed aside or exploitative in other ways. There's so
Yes.
many fascinating overlaps with anything that's feminized labor.
Yes, yes, exactly. Exactly, exactly. I know. And it's like, I don't know. That's why I keep hoping every time there's a new rush of like guys who are into menswear, I'm like, maybe this will change it. Like maybe they'll be really into sewing. This will be great. They won't change it. Not going to change international labor conditions, but yeah,
We can try.
good try.
I don't know. So, I mean, we're in an interesting time now, right? Like we're definitely at a crux. Like the system cannot support anymore. And I think that the one of the largest fears that I have is overproduction and
Yeah.
wastefulness. And we all know it's a problem, but it's a problem that it's not sustainable, right? And I think that what we're about to see unfolding in the world, everyone that's not so much in tune might say like, oh, that's not political or this isn't political. And it's like, actually, this is extremely, extremely political. Let's, talking about tariffs. I've talked about tariffs my entire career. Now we're watching them unfold. I have a personal opinion that we have hit a point of, we just can't support this system anymore, right? And I think that there will be a course correction just because of the way that the world is working. We won't be able to have the kind of over influx of goods coming into the country anymore. It might slow things down with the fast fashion system, especially in North America. Even going back to what I was saying about Dana Thomas, maybe in the
Yeah.
past 20 years, we're seeing mass production lines and collections in America that we didn't really see before that. I'm curious, in your personal opinion, if you also feel like we might experience a slowdown, not one that we've chosen for ethical reasons, but
Yeah,
one
yeah.
that maybe Mother Nature is bringing onto us. And if you think that there's a little bit of hope and optimism in that, and in turn, we might see some better production coming out of this country as well. I
I
don't know.
mean,
Your face is not
I
good for
know.
this.
I mean, I hope so. I don't know. I don't know. It's just like, I mean, the thing that saddens me is like, I feel like our best hope is more major retailers going out of business, which like
Oh, they're
no
doing
one
a
should.
great job of that here.
Exactly.
And the problem is investors won't let them die, which that's the
Exactly.
part I don't understand.
And that's the thing. Like, I don't know. It's just I went into a store the other day, like a big department store, just like, wandering around Manhattan. And I'm sure you feel the same way, like, seeing the world the way you do. You like just look around the main streets and you're like, man, everything is closed. There's so many clothes. Like, where are they all
Yeah.
gonna go? And I was just looking at this mega, mega sale and like looking at these racks and racks of clothes. And it did just make me feel like all my little concern about, oh, what am I going to do with like my one sweater that I don't want anymore? Let me get it cleaned and patched so that I can like sell it to, sell it to this thrift store for a good price. Like, what am I doing? I'm fighting the ocean with a little paper cup. Like, this thing is so huge. And sure, so many more people are so much more enlightened about the piles of burning clothes in the middle of the deserts of South America. But I mean, the reality of it is like times are really rough and we can't ask people to pay. They want cheap clothes, which makes like it's a terrible cycle. Like the less people make and the tougher times are, the less they can afford and the more they want cheap luxuries. If only we were able to have whatever affordability for everybody, maybe they could afford better clothes. But I don't know, the best slash worst example that I came across, and this will haunt me forever. And this was the moment that I was like, oh, our goose is so cooked. I don't know if anything will ever change. This was a secret that someone told me, so I'm gonna keep them super duper anonymous, but they work for a big company and they were telling me about how upcycling is in and how everyone wants to wear things that were like used to be trash. And they were telling me that their company is making plastic bottles that they are then recycling into sweaters.
Oh, I
So they
wish
could say
I
they're
wish I could
upcycled.
tell you that's the worst thing that I've heard, but it's
Oh no, I bet you've heard way, way worse. But
I'm saying,
I was
yeah.
like, our goose is so cooked. Like that's your that's your trendiness. The trend for sustainability translates to on a mass scale. Like I just don't have a lot. I mean, I'm amazed that you seem to have hope. Please
Oh,
break
I have
a
a
little piece of hope.
Oh my gosh, I'm gonna give you a mirror to that situation that maybe might give you a little bit of hope.
Okay,
There's a
please.
lot. Are you familiar with dead stock
Yeah.
materials? So when you go in factories, just for
Yeah.
listeners, if large runs of product have been done, there are often fabric yardages that are left over that's not enough to make more product in a significant way. So there's just a lot of this like dead material that sits in factories for a long period of time. There are so many fabulous individuals and organizations that have really started selling these materials, sourcing and selling these materials in a real way, not in a way that's, we're going to import them to the US and then re-export them somewhere else, which would defeat the entire purpose. But there are so many people that are doing the right thing, and they're also connecting with smaller designers. The thing that I worry about when you're talking about the department store example, which I worked for the worst one in America for the last 8 years of my corporate career. Everyone knows who that is. So every time I read about them in the news, especially recently, I'm like, this is the longest, like slowest death of all time. But I will say the thing that I worry about the most is not so much the mass production, but the smaller American designers, the
Yeah.
people that are the last to be paid when these companies go out of business. Those are the things that I am the most challenged with.
Yeah.
But I do have hope that Mother Nature is slowing us down in terms of how much there will be available to us, and that we will, for a lot of people, their brains will be retrained out of Amazon Prime mode into slower, better, less, those sorts of things, and really investing in that way. But that's not overnight, So we need to kind of teach people, retrain them in a way.
Did you think the tariffs helped a little bit?
No, I don't think that had
Okay.
anything. I struggle with that because I don't think that the people that most needed to learn from that situation still understand what tariffs
Yeah.
are, or why they should not, why they've been paying for them historically, but should not be paying any more for them, and why it's a challenge. I don't know. I could talk about tariffs for hours, but it's one of those things where I don't think it's that. I think that the incredible discrepancy that they'll see when there's no longer $5 t-shirts available, which should not have been available to them in the first place, and they go to a normal price, and then we start to have bigger conversations that are long overdue. So
Yeah,
that's what I'm
exactly.
hoping is going to happen.
Okay. I
Yeah.
pray. I pray. I pray. I pray. I don't know. I just, yeah. I feel like we can show people over and over again where it comes from, and it doesn't sink in because it goes back to the fundamental problem that's baked into the cruelty of clothing, which is
Yeah.
valuing other people's time.
Yeah.
And valuing like the labor of people who live in another country and don't speak your language, or even who live in your country maybe and don't speak your language. Like it's just
Right.
that's the thing. It's like, well, how much would you be paid to make this shirt? Like
Right.
it's this empathy game that we've been losing forever. I don't know. It's really funny. I feel like we can just show the same footage over and over again of like this is what a factory looks like, and people can't see it because it's hard. It's hard to look at.
It is hard to look at, and I think that the connection goes back to this question of, do you understand that a robot did not make this
Right,
garment?
exactly.
And
Exactly.
and I think that that's important, and I think that that's, you can show people the waste on the beach, and they're not going to feel bad, but they do need to understand somehow that where the things were made, how they were made, and that's the missing piece that we're
Yeah.
going to cover on my television shows.
Yes. I'll watch. I'll watch. Oh my God, I want to nerd out with you about tariffs. I want to know everything I know that's not what this is about,
We'll
but
we'll
I'm
take it
talking
off.
about
We're taking
okay,
off
okay, okay,
camera.
okay, okay.
Yeah.
We'll take it off camera. I want to know everything you think about tariffs because I'm working on a story about tariffs. Um, so it's selfishly for my own ends.
I think that the other thing I'll say is, because you are asking about that, and people will say Jessica's a stylist, she's a trend forecaster, she does this, but that's
Uh-huh.
where we come back to this,
Mm-hmm.
right? Is all of these parts of the process are very much holding hands, nothing separate from anything that's a different part of the garment, right? So I often say, like, in trend forecasting, one of the advantages that I have is I know what kind of machines make certain things. So if a trend happens, like circle bags, right? That's an expensive piece of machinery to have. That's something that you won't see in the mass market because a lot of those factories don't have that kind of machinery. So that will be a mid-level trend. But that's sort of it, right? When you talk about the tariffs, when you talk about the fabrications, all of the everything's holding hands so intricately. So yes, even the trend forecasting stylist has to know about tariffs.
It's so interesting. And that's the thing. That's the thing. That's the thing. Like because, I didn't decide when I started in podcasting, I was working for this podcast about architecture. And then after a while, I was like, oh, why don't we talk about fashion in the same way that we talk about architecture? But it was never my plan to get into fashion. And I was a little scared when I first got into it because I thought it was going to be a really scary world, that everyone was going to be like Zoolander. And it's full of people like you, Jessica. It's like full of nerds, It's full of people who are really, really passionate and really, really well versed in the world, and like extremely well rounded. And I had no idea. I was so quick to write off fashion as just clothing and not a reflection of every single thing that's going on in society at a given moment. And that's the thing that really annoys me about so much of the discourse around fashion. Like, I was just asked the other day to comment on a radio show. They were like, they emailed me and they were like, we just heard this statistic that skirt lengths shift every 40 years. It's like, you just heard that? But also, I hate this sort of rhetoric around trends that they almost cycle automatically. Like, it doesn't, that there's no human mechanism behind them. There's no politics. There's no supply chain. It just makes it sound like fashion is this wild swinging pendulum that's doing its own thing in a vacuum, is the way we talk about it. And it's not true that skirt lengths just like rise and fall on their own naturally, inevitably as a matter of time. It's because human history keeps repeating itself every 30 years. It's because like our tastes change, our tastes cycle back every generation. And I just think like therein lies the problem with fashion, is we talk about it in a disconnected way. Like, yeah.
I think that you're saying something that's really important too, which so many people think fashion and they're thinking about luxury and they're thinking about something that's on high, where I never wanted to be in that part of the pyramid, right? I don't want to sit at the top. I like the middle, right? I love mass commercial fashion. I love talking about style and trends in a way that I have to be able, I know that I really know it and that someone really knows it if they can repeat it back to me. And it is such a reflection of where we are in any period of time. And it's just so, it's so much more interesting to be in that space and to say to people, fashion is not, it's not snobby. It's not something that's like outside of you. You are participating in it. I mean, this Cerulean Blue speech that is said in The Devil Wears Prada. It's so good for a reason because it's so goddamn true.
It's
Like
so
you think it
true.
has nothing to do with you, but it has everything to do with you. It has everything to do with politics, it has everything to do with culture. It has all of these cycles are repeating, like you said, because humanity repeats certain cycles. So it's fascinating to me. Yeah, as you can see, I'm very passionate about it.
I love it. I love it. No, my favorite example of like the way that fashion matters is there's this great website where you can look at different photographs of it's like it randomly shuffles real photographs from history and it will show one to you and you have to guess the time period that the photograph was taken from. And it really shows you how much you're just looking at the clothes. Like you're looking at the cars a little bit, but you're like, oh, like maybe a little bit you're looking at the buildings, but you're really looking at the clothes. And that's how you're trying to guess what era these people live in. And these are not like trendy people, they're just normal people. And you can like tell what era they're living in by their clothes. It's called photochroma.app. Photochroma. But it's actually a really hard game. It's a really hard game. But it's like, that's the thing I always tell people is like, this is how you know. This is how you know. You can't, no one's just wearing the same clothes all their lives. Like everybody is changing with their time. You're like, yeah.
And to that too, I would also say we had someone on the show once where we talked about vintage clothing, and it's such a psychological game if you thrift or shop vintage, what era you're attracted to, whether
Yes.
consistently or at any given time, right? Like,
Ooh.
yeah, like I'm an 80s bitch. Like I want it big, I want it sparkly. I mean, like clearly, right? But like there's something to be said too, like the 80s, like the money, the like glamour, like all of these things maybe that we're lacking in this time period where we're like in a beige era for sure in fashion. But yeah, I like that. It has like a nice correlation to your website.
Yeah, totally. That's so funny. I have to listen to that episode.
I'm also really fascinated about how you covered clergy fashion on the show, spiritual tradition, clothing, robes, veils, adornment as a way to mark transformation or devotion. I was wondering if you saw parallels in contemporary fashion. I mean, we're going deep, and I'm wondering if you see these transformative trends or garments that people use in this way, even if it's not strictly religious?
That's such a good question. Yeah, I think about these a lot. I worked on a story about modesty, and I realized, like everything I do, because you asked that great question earlier about like, how does this impact my style? I kind of start dressing like every story I do. And I've started dressing really modestly ever since doing that modesty story. Cause I get it now. I think modesty is really beautiful. And I also know modesty has its problems and a lot of modest culture. Like, I'm not trying to put modesty on a pedestal. Like, I examine three different cultures: Judaism, my own culture, Islamic modesty, and Mormon modesty. And they all have their own problem. Like, they all have problems. Like, they're not the right way, but no way is the right way. But I just was like understanding where modesty was coming from and like looking at the texts from the Bible and the Quran that these dictums came from and how they've been changed over time. And the fascinating thing is, since that story came out, the Mormon church has changed a lot. Like, they now allow sleeveless garments, which means women can wear sleeveless shirts. And so many women in the Mormon church were like, what?
Well, they have two reality shows now.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I talked to so many Mormons who were like, fuck this. You told me my whole life that I was a slut if I wore sleeveless shirts, and then overnight you changed it. I thought this was from God, and it was from what? And so like, I know a bunch of people who left the church because of this. Like, these are really, 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 really powerful. And obviously it was like people were like, Masa Amini was murdered over modesty. Like, these are huge deals. Like, these really, really matter. What is considered, modest or appropriate or proper, especially as like a woman in polite society. And yet I still like love it and I get it for myself. But I think the one that really resonated with me the most was talking to Catholic priests about what they wear, because it really made no sense to me that these men who had taken these vows of poverty and chastity just like dress so swaggy. They dress so fancy. Their garments are so expensive. Like, a chasuble can cost up to 20 grand. They are so lavish. And of course, my immediate thought was like, what, like, on the outside, of course, to me as an outsider, I was like, this feels kind of corrupt. This feels kind of wrong. Like, why would God care? Why should anybody care? It's all the same problems. Like, I was levying all of the same criticisms that someone who doesn't care about fashion would say to me, right? Like, why is it so expensive? Why does anybody care? Isn't it the wrong values? And so it was really interesting to suddenly be the one being so critical of fashion. And it was really beautiful talking to these priests and these monks from like lots of different sects of Catholicism, talking about like how beautiful it is to adorn ourselves and how it is a way to like express holiness and what it means to be alive, even on this like fleeting mortal coil. It was very existential, and it made me realize, I think I vacillate back and forth as we've been talking. I vacillate back and forth between like, the stuff is silly, it doesn't really matter. And then talking to these priests, I'm like, oh, it does. It like, beauty does matter. Like, beauty is significant. Like, real beauty is significant. And this gets right back to what you're saying in the very beginning, Jessica, about like valuing the handmade and valuing craft. Like, this is why the priests wear such expensive robes. They're like lovingly handcrafted by the most ethical factories you can possibly imagine, living by their Christian values. Everyone gets like a free lunch, and I met them. They're all super nice. They're functionally living in a monastery, and it's the way a lot of the monks keep themselves alive. And it like made the fashion make sense. So like, we're extolling the goodness of reality in everything we do, including the clothes. And it's like, what a beautiful way to dress. If only, if I could afford it. If we all could afford it, wouldn't we love to extol the beauty of life in everything we do? But it provides this like beautiful ideal, and it gave me something to reach for, not to dress as a priest, but to dress in the mindset of a priest, where it's not about the clothes, but it's about the message that they send and how they're made and what they represent. And they really enjoy them. The priests love their clothes.
Okay, I'm kind of dying right now. I'm Catholic and I've been to holy sites, and every time you go there's a significant shopping area. And I was in Fatima last summer and I brought a friend, and there is a store. I mean, you talk about the swag, the priest swag, like
Oh,
you
yeah.
see garments in this store. My friend was like, "What the hell?" And I'm like, "But I kind of thought about you for a second, right? Like you're in China and you're like in Uniqlo and you're like, I want to remember this moment that I
Yeah.
had when I saw this thing." And I remember, like, I think about these priests and they're like, I went to Fatima, like, on a pilgrimage, and like, here's my outfit that I bought while I was there.
100, they love it.
They do,
They love it.
yes.
They're like, check this out. And it was so funny. I talked to this like kind of Father John Martin. He's kind of famous. And he was like, look at this. Like, oh my God.
They're like literally coming out, arms raised, like swag. Yes.
well, there's this great moment that I loved because I'd never been to mass before. It was also really fun as like an outsider. I was like, this is amazing. The smells and bells, as all the priests called them.
So witchy,
And
yeah.
so it was great. And at one point, this famous priest, John Martin, was like swinging the incense, and he turned to me and he gave me a wink and he said, I wore something special for you.
Oh, I love
I
it.
love.
I'm so charmed.
I loved it. I loved it so much. I loved it so much. And they were also really like, I don't know. They were like, yeah, you can try stuff on. I thought it was going to be, and that was the other thing, is that they weren't like, no, you can't touch the garments. You can't try them on. You're a woman, you're not Catholic. Like, none of that. They were like, yeah, try it on, like put on the hat, put on, like, do whatever. It was this like level of openness that I don't think I was expecting. And I think I feel that in every country, culture, religion that I've encountered, especially when you go through clothes. Like, I don't know. There's like there's like, try it on. Like, obviously not in a cultural, no one's like, go take, go do whatever you want with
Yeah,
it.
you're not like trying them on in the priest store and like pretending anything.
Yeah, exactly. But just like in the moment, they're
Yeah.
like, there's this very welcoming attitude. And I think, you're literally walking in their shoes, which is the fun thing about talking about clothes. You get to like try on someone else's life. So now I'm like obsessed with Catholicism now. It's like,
We can add that on the list of things we can talk about. I'll talk about Catholicism with you all day.
it's what a religion. It's so great.
It's very fancy. There's a lot
That's
of
a
things.
show.
Yeah, there's a lot happening there.
It's so great. I really love it.
Oh my gosh, I love this. We love to just indulge our guests a little bit. They're doing such amazing work. You're bringing all of these stories to the public and really delving into what's happening in the fashion industry. When you step away from that and you step away from your work and you're taking care of Avery, what are the self-care practices that you most often turn to, and why?
Ooh. Oh, well, I love to nap. I'm a really big napper. I tend to nap once a day. I'm really good at it. Like, I can nap for like 5 minutes and feel refreshed. I can nap almost anywhere. I'm like amazing at it. I would say that's my primary self-care practice, is taking a nap. Like, really, sometimes I'll just set a timer for 5 minutes and take a little snooze. Yeah, that's my biggest one. I mean, that's the hard thing when they're like, do something you love and you never work a day in your life. Like, I'm sort of working all the time, which is to say, like, it's all stuff I love to do. I'm always reading, I'm always writing, I'm always talking. It's an amazing way to live. And I wouldn't trade it for anything. I'm like super lucky, but I feel like, that's what I enjoy doing. My ways out of it are like taking a long walk or taking a nap, or like just tuning out. I wish I had some other weird hobby. I wish I could be like, yeah, I'm a harpist, but I'm not. I don't. This is kind of what I do.
I mean, being a harpist is very cool. But what's interesting is that we have spoken to so many different people in the fashion industry, spiritual industry, and it kind of doesn't matter if you're like a high priestess or if you're in the fashion game. A lot of times people's self-care is like intentionally simple restorative things like naps and walks. Those are the things that we do for ourselves. They regulate our nervous system. And even for the like highly magical people who we talk to who do exorcisms, they're like, really, I just need to drink a glass of water and like take a few deep breaths and have a good night's sleep. And I really love that because I think this is a beautiful red thread that we've been finding. And the simple things matter. Sleep matters. Going outside matters.
Do you nap?
I've been trying to get more into napping because I'm not a great night sleeper. And then I have an alter ego night Jez that does things that I'm not always aware of until day Jez takes over. And so I'm trying to nap more. But yeah, napping is glorious. I napped on Sunday and it was profound.
Napping rules. And I do feel like it frees you up in the night. You're like, I don't know, I can stay up later. I can wake up early. Or like the time for sleeping doesn't feel so precious. If I'm like, whatever, I'll make up for it later. Like I'll sleep in the day. Thomas Edison, problematic guy, whatever. He is a hero of mine just for his naps. Like he would nap all the time. There are these amazing photographs of him just like napping on the floor of his factory. He would just pass out. And because that's his thing. He'd be like, I'd stay up all night working and then I could just nap whenever I want. It like changes the day.
That's so funny. I had no idea.
Yeah, and I feel like it's an alternative to the people who are like, I've got my routine and my schedule and that's what I do. I feel like the nap is like, that's my key. Sometimes I wake up at this time. Sometimes I wake up at that time. Doesn't matter. Got a nap.
Yeah, sometimes you have to power down. And that's beautiful.
It's very anti-establishment to nap like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very punk.
Thanks. I used to be so against it. I used to be like, I'll nap when I'm dead. And look at me now.
You're rested and hydrated.
Well, that I need to work on. I'll work on that.
What do you have coming up on the horizon that you can share about for people to stay tuned?
Thank you for asking. Well, I'm working on a book but that won't be out for a while. And, always making more podcasts. They're like coming out at a monthly cadence now, which is nice. That's like a really nice cadence for me.
Yeah, it's a good flow.
It's a good flow. I would say it takes about like a month for me to make them in the way that I like. So this is very nice for me. This is like a treat.
Love. And how can people best find you and support your work?
You're so generous with your questions. I have a Substack. It's also nice because then I'll tell you, because my episodes come out so sporadically. That's when I'll tell you if I have an episode up, and it has different like links and images and stuff. So that's articlesofinterest.substack.com.
Awesome. Yeah, I highly recommend. I like your Substack.
Thanks.
Just discovered it and I'm like, oh yes, thank goodness. Well, thank you so much for having this or making this time to speak with us. We really appreciated you having on the show.
This was fantastic. It was like a nap in the best way. I feel restored.
We have a really fun, weird dream.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Thank you so much for joining us in the immaterial world. While you're here, we hope you subscribe, rate, and review us on your favorite streaming services. The real magic is in connection and community. Share your favorite episode with friends and come follow us for more on Instagram at immaterialworldpod and Patreon at patreon.com/immaterialworld.
I like to see you shining. Tell me all your dreams. You're a special kind of magic. Show me all your favorite things. You're pretty like a sunset. You're pretty like a pearl. You're a special kind of magic. Dancing in a crazy swirl. In a crazy swirl. Immaterial world, come meet me in the immaterial world. As far as the galaxy goes, we're flying in the immaterial world. Immaterial world. Come meet me in the immaterial world. Your mind, your body and soul, delighted in the immaterial world. The immaterial world. The immaterial world.
Immaterial World is hosted by Jessica Richards and Jezmina von Thiele. Music and editing by Dia Luna. Artwork by Lane Friend. Follow Immaterial World Pod on Instagram and Patreon at patreon.com/immaterialworld. You can visit our website at www.immaterial-world.com or email us at immaterialworldpod@gmail.com. Thank you for being part of our immaterial world.
Welcome to the immaterial world.